Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Johnny.
I'm Cayton, and today we're going to be ranking the MCU. We both have our own individual list, and I'm sure they're going to be very different and maybe quite surprising to those of you who enjoy the MCU. So without further ado, we're going to get into it and start at the bottom of the list.
There's going to be quite a few unpopular opinions in these lists, but
So I'm going to let Jonathan kick things off with number 22.
what I feel, for me, the worst MCU movie thus far, it's actually the only one I have not finished watching all the way through because I think it's that terrible, and that will be Thor: The Dark World.
What is terrible?
It's just very difficult to watch. There's nothing that draws me in. I don't care about any of the characters in this film. I just don't care about it. There's nothing that keeps me in it. I just can't. I can't.
All right, so for my number 22, it would have to be Captain Marvel easily. Captain Marvel is the only Marvel movie, and not even Thor: Dark World, as much as you'll see how much I don't like Thor: Dark World. As much as I despise Thor: Dark World, Captain Marvel is the only Marvel movie where I legitimately almost fell asleep. It is that bad. The actors can't act. The writing was trash. The plot was really dull. They made Skrulls the good guys, which was a really big letdown because that means things like secret invasion, things like that can't take place. And then they had Nick Fury lost his eye to an alien cat, which if you go back to Winter Soldier, it makes that one line where he tells Steve Rogers, "Last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye." It made that look really freaking stupid because that was definitely not the case. So he must have been lying his ass off to Captain America. The only redeeming thing I would say about Captain Marvel, the only positives I can pull from it is Samuel Jackson can still act, even given what lines that he's given and things like that. He can act, and the little cat alien thing was really cool. But other than that, this movie was really bland. Choreography was really dull, and Captain Marvel has to be the least interesting main character of any movie, which is why I have it as number 22.
All right, let's just move on. You're number 21.
Oh, 22, my 21?
Yeah, you're number 21.
I had to go with Thor: The Dark World. It was kind of hard to get through. But I didn't fall asleep like I did almost with Captain Marvel. But Thor: Dark World is really bland. The villain's really bland. The reason I have it above Captain Marvel is because Chris Hemsworth is a better actor, and I can stomach his scenes more than I can Brie Larson. Like look at his face and I want to slap it. So, and also I don't like Loki. I know that's probably an unpopular opinion. I don't like Loki, but this is my favorite movie with Loki in it. And the one thing I do like about the movie is Thor and Loki teaming up, and Loki trying to redeem himself, even though we all know he's still trying to backstab, and then he fakes his own death. And then at the very last scene where he takes over and you realize that he's actually Odin, that was the only real payoff to the movie, which is why I have it above Captain Marvel.
It's a terrible movie.
What's your 21?
My number 21 would have to be Captain Marvel. I'm not really going to expand on it too much. I think he already hit all the nails on the head. I legitimately fell asleep twice during this film. The only reason why we even stayed is because we spent good money to go see this film, which I would not recommend anybody to do. Just don't. The dialogue was really hard to sit through. It was painful at times, and it's very much, you can tell it's scripted. It felt very much like a comic book film, not a very good one. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that one. Next on my list would have to be Iron Man 2. For me, Iron Man 2 is... Iron Man's probably my favorite MCU superhero, and it saddens me to have to put Iron Man 2 so far down on this list, but just not a whole lot of things in the film worked for me. I didn't really connect with any of the supporting cast. I didn't really like the
Black Widow?
story. That might
Her
be
introduction to the MCU.
her introduction. Well, that was the only good thing, but that wasn't enough to move this any further up on the list for me. I didn't like the villain. It just
Which one? Sam Rockwell or
exactly. I didn't like any of
what
them.
Flash or his name is?
I just didn't like any of the villain in this. Just nope.
All right, so my number 20, my Iron Man 2 is actually higher up the list, and I'll get to why later. But number 20 for me is actually Iron Man 3. The reason Iron Man 3 is so far down the list is because of all the movies in the MCU, this movie wastes its potential the most. The first half of this movie is pretty stellar. Like, first half of the movie, you're entrenched in the movie, like, oh, this is really cool. Tony Stark has anxiety issues. He's having panic attacks. You're dealing with like real people problems. And he's dealing with this. He's having flashbacks to what he did in Avengers 1. And I love that. And then you introduce him to this kid. And they're both like really sarcastic and kind of rude to each other. It's like a little Tony Stark. And I love that dynamic. And then he's trying to find who he is without the suit pretty much. And I love that whole
Aspect.
Yeah, the aspect, that storyline I love. And then the villain, who you thought was the villain, was terrifying. It was, especially with all the stuff going on in the world at the time, like with Al Qaeda and stuff like that, where this dude's going around terrorizing people and sending, all these threatening message over like news and stuff, and cutting people's heads off, and he's telling Iron Man he's coming for him and all this stuff. I loved that, but then it ended up being a joke. He was a joke character, and then it was this, I can't even think of the actor's name right now. He always plays a douchebag character, though. Guy Pearce, I think his name is. Always plays a douchebag.
I think so.
Count on Monte Cristo, go watch that. And they made him the villain. I mean, he was the Mandarin, which, if you're a comic book fan, a Mandarin is like Iron Man's arch nemesis, and it made this stupid guy who's just jealous of Tony because he got with Pepper pretty much, and then he's like shooting lava out, and in the final act, Iron Man calls all his freaking suits, and then
I personally love that.
Pepper's wearing a suit, and it's just like the whole last half of the movie just sunk it really low to me. So I would say of all MCU movies, that one had the most potential and ended up being the most
disappointing
for me.
That will just lead me into my number 19 on my list is Iron Man 3. Just like he said, there were so many good things in this film, with so much great potential, but it just didn't outweigh the negative of having that twist reveal of who the Mandarin really was or wasn't in this case. And it really just, it just drug the whole thing down. And it's honestly, for me, not a very rewatchable film. I'd rather watch any of the other films that are on this list above it on this list before watching Iron Man 3. One thing I do like about Iron Man 3 is the relationship between Tony Stark and the kid. That, I think they could have built a really great movie if they centered more on that and played more on that rather than this whole Mandarin crisis thing. That was just terrible for me.
Agreed. So my number 19 is, you got any guesses? What my 19 would be?
Iron Man 2.
Nope, Iron Man 2 is actually a little bit higher on the list.
Captain America? Spider-Man Homecoming.
Captain America, that was disrespectful. My number 19 is actually Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Wow.
My reasons for Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I gotta be honest, like my bottom
13.
Yeah, like my bottom 10 or so could all kind of be interchangeable because I think they're all just kind of mediocre films. So it was kind of hard nitpicking, and this is what the list is doing. But Ant-Man and the Wasp for me, I love Paul Rudd and I love his performance. But the villain aspect of the movie really was a letdown for me, especially compared to the first film where you had Yellow Jacket and things like that. I didn't like Lawrence Fishburne, kind of being a bad guy, and then the ghost thing was really weird, and then you had like this 2-bit gangster who's like trying to come after the Wasp, and then like the villain aspect kind of ruined the movie for me, and I also didn't really care for the storyline, them going back to get Janet and things like that. Like, I didn't really care for it. The only thing I did like about the movie is Paul Rudd and his character's relationship with his daughter Cassie. Like, those little genuine moments are really awesome. And my favorite scene in the movie is when he's in the attic with her and they're sitting down and I wouldn't say depressed, but he's trying to figure out what he needs to do, and his daughter basically, is like, you need to be Ant-Man, and talking about how he needs a partner and stuff like that. And then I just love their whole dynamic. But as far as the whole movie, it's like, I don't really like rewatching it. The only really payoff for the movie is after the end credit scene, when everyone that Ant-Man knows, well, aside from his daughter, but like Wasp and Michael Douglas' character and Janet, who they just got back, when they all get snapped by Thanos and he's stuck in the quantum realm, that's the biggest payoff of the movie, and it's really the only reason I would recommend watching it. It's my honest opinion. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I'll get to Ant-Man and the Wasp eventually.
What's your number? Whatever number you're on.
Number 18. That brings us into number 18. The 5th worst movie for me in the MCU. I'll probably get a lot of flack and hate for this, but I'm up to it. And for me, it is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
I personally... Oof. There were little things that I did enjoy in this movie. Over 2, and I'll make a point. When I get to Volume 2 later on, I'll reiterate my point. There are things I do like about the Guardians, but overall, nothing really made me a fan of the characters. I didn't really like the other movies that we've talked about thus far. There's just nothing that really kept me in there. Groot and Rocket are the only things I liked about Guardians 1.
Gamora?
I didn't like Gamora in Volume 1. I liked her better in Volume 2. The things I like about Volume 1, I liked better in Volume 2, which is why Volume 2 is higher on my list than Volume 1. I wasn't a fan of the villain either.
No, I agree on the villain, right? He's lame.
The movie was okay up until towards the end with the villain and the final showdown, and then it's just, for me... I'm
going to speak on that later when I get my ranking.
For me, it was just a slap in the face. Like really?
The ending?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get it to my own.
It was just a slap in the face, and it's like... And then Groot, in the end, the only thing I like about the movie, dies in the end, technically, and then comes back as a seed in a pot, but
we are Groot.
We are not Groot. Not in Volume 1.
Alright, so wow, my Guardians is actually a lot higher, even though it's not as high as a lot of other people, but Guardians 1 for me is a lot higher, but isn't as high because of the end scene. I'll get to that later. My number 18, which I almost put lower, is Spider-Man Homecoming. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed about that. A lot of people think it's the best Spider-Man movie, and it's, just phenomenal. People are saying it was the best comic book movie of that year.
It depends on what generation you ask.
Yeah, well, if you ask me, I would have to say next to Captain Marvel, this movie disgusted me the most. And the reason being is because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and there's so many opportunities to do things here, and there were so many slap in the faces. For instance, if you're a Spider-Man fan, everyone knows the villain Scorpion, right? He gets attached to the Scorpion suit, goes on a rampage, stuff like that. So Scorpion's in this movie. You probably missed him, probably had no idea he was in the movie. That's because he was an arms dealer who had a Scorpion tattoo on his neck, and that was Scorpion. Or Shocker, who everyone knows, he has the cool suit, he does his little shock waves. No, in this, Shocker just had Chitauri technology from Avengers. That was his freaking gauntlets. Another villain wasted. Things I liked about the movie is I loved Michael Keaton as Vulture. He was awesome, and probably the best scene in the movie, which is why this is up more than the other ones, because I think there was better little scenes in it, like the scene between Michael Keaton and Spider-Man in the car, when he's taken to the prom dance and they both realize who each other are. That was really awesome. I love the acting there. But as far as like a Spider-Man movie, it was really blah to me. I didn't like the action scenes. I didn't like the special effects in the movie. I hated the overuse of Aunt May being hot, which unfortunately the Russo brothers, much as I love them, they did start that, but it was very minor. And then these other movies just kind of ran with it, and it's really evident in Spider-Man: Homecoming, like when Iron Man's like, "Oh, I hope Aunt May's wearing something skimpy," and then he's like, "Oh, I'm just kidding," and then when her and Peter out eating dinner or whatever, and the guy's like flirting with her, like it's like really overdone. I don't understand why. I don't like any supporting cast aside from the Vulture in this movie. Like his friends, I just like Ned is really uninteresting to me. The Mary Jane twist at the end was really weak and really like stupid. The girl he liked, I don't think could act for anything, and definitely didn't look like she belonged in high school. Like I was like, what is this? The movie's another reason that I really just found it distasteful. It was very, very PC, and you could tell throughout the whole movie as far as little marks they were trying to hit. Flash Thompson isn't like a physical bully anymore. Now he's just this troll that says really immature things like Penis Parker, and just goes out of his way to belittle Spider-Man with his words. And also there was never one of my biggest things in this movie. There was never an inclination that Peter Parker actually had spider sense in this movie, which was really weird considering like in Infinity War it's obvious he has it. I'm not sure in Civil War if it made it obvious, but I mean if you're having like a solo Spider-Man movie and there's no like recognition that he has spider sense, I don't understand that. And also, like his suit was built by Tony Stark.
I mean, Spider-Man not having spider sense would be like Captain America not having his shield. Like, what are you doing?
True. And I don't like the fact that he relies so much on Iron Man's suit. It didn't feel like Spider-Man. It felt like a mini Iron Man almost. And the whole movie, he's trying to figure things with the suit out. I didn't like that. I do like his relationship with Iron Man as a mentor. Is pretty cool. And I like when Iron Man shows up in his suit later. When Spider-Man's like, "Oh, you're not even here," and then Robert Downey Jr. just walks out the suit. That's probably second best scene in the movie compared to the car scene. And other than that, it's like really forgettable like action in the movie, especially the end with him and the Vulture. But yeah, I just don't really like Spider-Man: Homecoming at all. Oh, and let's not forget the Washington Monument scene when Mary Jane, if we don't know is Mary Jane yet, is like, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to go in there because slaves built it." Like, that movie just filled with little things like that, and I don't understand why. I really don't. So, as a Spider-Man movie, it just really falls flat for me. And I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He's awesome, but I hated the direction, the story, the plot, the side characters, and yeah, that's my thoughts on Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Your fifth worst movie in the MCU, Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yep.
What's your number 17? Let's move on to the next 5.
Iron Man 2. So you see, it's not as far down. The reason I like Iron Man 2 is because the little things that do redeem it, to me, outshine the movies I previously listed in their finest moments. So some of these, like I said, Spider-Man: Homecoming had the car scene. Ant-Man and the Wasp had the post-credit scene, like little payoffs. Iron Man 2, biggest thing I like about the movie that people forget, a really cool plot line, is that Tony Stark found a new element. A lot of people forget like his whole thing when he's trying to save his own life and he's kind of going through and he finds a whole new element, and I love that little storyline with him. Things I hated about the movie is the villains were really forgettable, like Sam Rockwell's character and Mickey Rourke's character, who I don't even know his name right now, Whiplash, I think. They were just really blah to me. And I do not like, what's his face? War Machine?
Actor. Don Cheadle.
Yeah, after seeing Terrence Howard in Iron Man 1, like, just so flawlessly be that guy, and then have Don Cheadle come in, it was really weird. I will say, like, after watching Endgame, I like him more. But when this came out, it was just like really out of place to me, and he wasn't really convincing, and I didn't really get that really buddy relationship with Tony Stark. Other things I didn't like about the movie is the whole drunk scene when he's in his suit, he's peeing in his suit, and then he's drunk fighting Rhodey. It was like really dumb to me. I do like Black Widow, the inclusion, and that's why this is a little bit higher, because I love the Element plot line where he finds a new element. I also like the inclusion of Black Widow into the movie and her introduction to the MCU. Other than that, this movie is really blah. It's not rewatchable to me.
Those are some good things, but for me, it just wasn't enough to outbalance the terrible.
What's your next?
My number 17 for me was gonna have to be Captain America: The First Avenger. The reason being is because it
that hurt.
For me, it's Chris Evans' weakest performance. For me, it's a toss-up between his performance in Avengers and his performance in his first film. I just feel his performance is really weak. I don't really connect with his character. It didn't make me want to like Captain. I didn't like Captain America.
You didn't like his.
I didn't like Captain America.
Symbolism of being a good man.
That again, it's something that it might have something good and decent about the film, but for me, it just doesn't outweigh everything else. It was just a weak film for me. I did not like it.
Because of his performance?
I didn't want to watch the next Captain America when it came out because I didn't like the first one. I didn't watch Winter Soldier for a year or two after it came out because I was scared to watch. I mean, after Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 and then Captain America came out, I didn't have high hopes for the MCU, if I'm honest.
Okay, well, I'm going to go on to my number 16 because I can't believe Captain America was that low. I'm going to go with my 16, which was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Because it's definitely not as good a movie as the first one. So, my reasons for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 being at number 16 is it kind of does everything the first one did, but just not as good.
I disagree. I think it's the other way around.
I didn't like the villain aspect of the movie with Ego and his dad. I didn't like that plot line at all. And I didn't really like the last half of the movie. Like, I didn't really get sold on Kurt Russell and all that.
I would have to agree. Kurt Russell was pretty weak. That was a weak point for me as well.
So Guardians 2, is not a movie I want to go and rewatch. None of these movies I've listed I want to go back and rewatch. And Guardians Volume 2 is one of them. It's really forgettable to me. The only things I enjoy in the movie is I like Nebula's character development in Volume 2. I love Baby Groot because he's awesome.
I love Baby Groot.
He steals every scene in the movie. And I like when Star-Lord pretty much becomes a god at the end of the movie and they're fighting like Dragon Ball Z characters. I did like that. But other than that, I don't really like the Yondu thing. I don't like his dad. The movie just kind of falls flat to me.
I still think it's better than Volume 1.
What's your next?
My next one is going to have to be Thor.
The first one?
The first one.
Wow, that's my next one too.
The first Thor is number 16 on my list. At the time it came out, it was a decent movie. I just lump it right in there with Captain America: The First Avenger. It's not a great movie. He pointed on this earlier when we were talking about Thor: The Dark World. I do not like Loki. I am not a huge fan of Loki. Not in any of these films am I a fan of Loki. And Thor, he's a major player in Thor, and I just don't like Loki. A lot of people have a hard on for Loki. I was not one of them.
No hard on for me.
I think this movie had some potential, more so, Thor being stripped of his worthiness, trying to get back his worthiness. I just think maybe they could have done more with that. Maybe it not been so, it just felt really easy for him to be worthy again. and then bam, he's got his hammer, and he's...
Well, since this is my next one, I'm gonna chime in.
Go ahead.
I don't like any side characters. I don't like the doctor guy. I don't like Jane, and Kat Dennings is really annoying in this movie. She's like, oh, I just hit this dude in my car. Like, the little bits of her in it really takes me away from the movie.
There's a time and a place for humor in a lot of these movies that we have in the bottom of our list. It's because the humor is just ill-placed and it just doesn't fit and it's just out of place.
We don't
doesn't make sense.
We do not like the MCU because it's funny.
It's a comic book movie. Like, we're here for the action. We're here for the good story. We're here for the good dialogue. We're not here for the jokes.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like Guardians Volume 1.
Or 2. One good thing about Thor is it did introduce Hawkeye. So.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, see,
he was in it briefly when Thor was trying to get his hammer. See, he didn't.
Oh, I remember now. Okay, I remember now. Okay, I remember. It's just how much I don't like that movie.
So why don't you go ahead and go to your number 15?
My number 15 is going to be Spider-Man Homecoming. I thought about this one for a long time. It's even in my notes right here that I really wanted to put it lower. But I think for me, compared to all the ones I've listed before, the things I liked about this outweighed the things I didn't like. For me, Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man, it carries this movie. It completely carries this movie. I was okay with the villain. For me, this is the best villain that I've seen in these movies so far on my list. I like the villain, and that's probably why it's higher than the other ones on my list, is because I like this villain more than I like the villains of all of the other ones. His portrayal, like I said, I think is on point. I think he plays the part very well. He mentioned it, and it's in my notes as well. The supporting cast is terrible in this film, and it almost was going to drag this film down even lower on my list. Every scene, I would much rather just have Tom Holland on screen doing something stupid with Spider-Man, and I'd watch it.
Yeah, like the scenes when he's going around helping the neighborhood. That's one like little gem in the movie, is when he's just being Spider-Man.
The scene where he's trying to track a sale, and he gets his, it activates insta-kill, and then he gets caught up and he trips and he's being goofy. For me, that was a more watchable part of the film than anything with any of the supporting cast.
Agreed. So we're going to get right down to number 14 for me, which is another probably unpopular opinion. And I really, really wanted to put this lower on the list, I'm going to be honest, because it's probably my least favorite director on this list, and it's Avengers 1. Avengers 1, directed by Joss Whedon, who I cannot stand as a director. You want to talk about injecting humor in every freaking sentence, every line in the freaking movie is Joss Whedon. I felt Avengers could have been so much better if anyone who was serious was directing it. Could you imagine the Russo brothers directed Avengers 1? The different product that we would have right now? When you look at Infinity War and Endgame and Civil War, and then you go back and look at Joss Whedon's Avengers.
I would have rather had James Cameron direct the Avengers.
Like, everything's a joke. I hate the way Captain America's written in this movie, where he's just terrible. He seems like just this freaking douchebag. Which, if you go and watch Captain America 1, you would know that's not the case. Like, he's a noble person, noble heart, and then he's just like too overbearing in Avengers in the way Joss Whedon portrays him. He almost
felt like a bully, like he was trying to bully Tony Stark when they were having some scenes, and he's like, put on this suit. That's not Captain America. And, since we're on the subject of number 14 on our list, Avengers is also my number 14. I think everybody would agree that they thought it was a great film when it came out. To see all the Avengers...
I did not.
To see all the Avengers together and, to have that first film of all of them, it was kind of, I don't want to say iconic, but there was just something about it that people really enjoyed. I know I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I think I saw it in theaters twice, actually. But over the years, going back and after seeing some of these other films with these characters and just seeing how much better they have been written and how much better their acting is since then. This film is painful to watch. Some of the dialogue,
Thor
some
saying,
of the,
"You want me to bring the hammer gun?"
that was pretty terrible, and it just after Captain America 1, and then you have Avengers. I just didn't like Captain America as a character. The way he had been written thus far, I just didn't like anything about him. I didn't like his scenes. At this point, I really didn't like Thor either. I felt Thor was a very weak character. I'd much rather see Black Widow and Hawkeye. I don't really want to get started on the Hulk. That's a whole nother...
I hate Mark Ruffalo as a Hulk.
That's just a whole other issue. I'm not a huge fan of the Mark Ruffalo. As y'all can already tell so far in this video, that neither one of us have mentioned the Incredible Hulk movie.
More on that later.
More on that later. But Mark Ruffalo's Hulk just kind of...
He's very cartoonish.
She didn't fit. And that's the thing about the Joss Whedon films, is they're more cartoony to me than comic book. You're supposed to be a comic book fan. You know, it's a comic book film.
Cartoons. And what's with the Hulk scene, it still bothers me to this day when he was like, "That's my secret, I'm always angry." I still don't know what that means to this day, and then he just turns the Hulk on, which after that, he doesn't ever do that. So, I don't know, I still don't know what that was. I felt like Joss Whedon was like, "Oh, this is a really cool line, let's have it in the movie."
Yeah, because I think isn't it in Age of Ultron when Black Widow says sorry and she pushes him down a hole because she needs the big guy. When in Avengers, he's always angry.
Always
he
angry.
Just choose to become the Hulk. So, and that they were both directed by Joss Whedon, right? That's kind of an inconsistent. That's just what.
There's too many jokes in Avengers.
I can't.
And also, like, the fight scenes and the choreography were really dull. Like, compared to other movies.
Just it was kind of like the angles and the shots, the way scenes were shot, the way it was cut, it just kind of didn't... It's definitely not near as good as any of these other films that we're going to be talking about coming up.
Yeah. What's the redeeming qualities about Avengers as a movie?
Iron Man's in it.
Iron Man saves everyone at the end.
And at this point, Iron Man, for me, has had the best film in Iron Man 1 up to this point. So that's the highlight for me, was Iron Man. I didn't like the fight between Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. Just the way Captain America was written just didn't...
He's a douche.
It just didn't work for me. I think we should just move on to number 13.
What's your 13?
He's probably about to... We're probably going to have to cut because he's probably going to hit me, and then we'll have to come back.
As long as it's not Captain America, Winter Soldier.
My number 13 is going to be Hulk.
Oh,
I went back and forth with this. I was just... As a comic book character, I've never been a fan of the Hulk. Cartoons have had the Hulk in it. I just didn't really care about the Hulk. So when this movie came out, I never saw it. It wasn't until probably within the last 4 or 5 months that I've actually sat down and he made me watch the Hulk. So I didn't go in with high expectations. I just went in thinking this is going to be terrible. I'm not going to like it. I don't even want to watch this. I liked it. I had seen Mark Ruffalo's portrayal of the Hulk before I had seen Edward Norton's, and now going back and seeing Edward Norton, I'm like, what the hell, MCU? Give me Edward Norton.
he wanted more money.
Selfish?
He does. Edward Norton does kind of have that little air about him. Well, I've heard and read about it, but apparently he wanted more money, as did Terrence Howard, which is why both of them are no longer in the MCU.
Well, they're selfish because we got
They
B actors.
Like Mark Ruffalo.
The replacements are trash.
Anything else you want to say about Incredible Hulk?
I mean, yeah, there's things about Incredible Hulk that I was okay with the story. Like, overall, it was an enjoyable movie for me. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, considering how much I wanted to hate it before I even watched it.
A lot of people judge that movie because it doesn't fit the MCU template of just being funny. Which I'll get in my...
Which is probably why I do like it. It's because it's not... It's a movie not based off of humor. There's actually a real story here. Not everything's fun and games. Not everything's a comic book.
Josh Whedon. So I'm gonna get down to my number 13, which I know is probably higher on my brother's list.
Maybe.
And it kind of goes. I had Josh Whedon's Avengers 1 as number 14, and now number 13 I have Age of Ultron. So Age of Ultron doubles up on the quips. The first half of the movie, I swear, there's more quips in it than the whole first Avengers movie at all. And the one joke that is so annoying to me, and they overplay it in the movie, is when Captain America curses, and Iron Man's like, "Oh, you need to watch your mouth," because Captain America got onto them earlier for cussing, and they do that like 4 times throughout the movie about Cap's mouth. It's like it's really not funny. Maybe that very first time I might have been funny, but other than that, no. I hated the plot line of Hulk and Black Widow. Considering there was that literally came out of nowhere. Even from the first movie that he directed. Like, yeah, she went and recruited him, but that was about it. And then all of a sudden this movie is like they have this attraction to each other. And it was really weird because I felt at that point in time her chemistry with Hawkeye would make a lot more sense for them to be together. Granted, you don't know that he has a family yet, but their chemistry was better, and I could see if he came up with that. Or even this also came after Winter Soldier, and even her and I felt Chris Evans had a lot of chemistry,
right?
And their characters make a lot of sense together too. But nah, it's her and the Hulk, Mark Ruffalo. So, and then to make it worse, you make it to where like she can't have children, and he thought that was a really good plot line for her. And like the scene where they're in the little cabin at Hawkeye's place, and she's going the sad story about how she can't have kids. Like, I literally didn't feel like any emotion at all. I was like, this is so dumb.
Yeah, like he was trying to portray like she's some kind of monster because she's a trained assassin who can't have kids, and that
she's a monster.
That's
just like the Hulk, because she can't have kids.
Yeah, Hulk can't have kids. I guess they're the same.
Yeah. And I also don't like how Quicksilver was killed in this movie. And Josh Whedon even said he literally did it for shock value. And I'm not down with that. Like, I don't like shock value for shock value's sake. And that's why he killed Quicksilver, which had a lot of potential, just to shock the audience. And I think that's really lazy story writing. So the reason I put Ultron above these other movies is because Ultron himself is freaking awesome. And my favorite scene in the movie is when they're all together in the Avengers Tower, and Ultron has it comes walking out, and he kind of looks like a puppet, and he starts just talking. It's almost like horror, like sci-fi horror at that point, and I really like that. And I love Ultron as a character. I love Iron Man in this movie. I love where it shows that he's trying to protect the world, and he goes behind the Avengers' back with Hulk and makes Ultron, and how, you know, he feels that he doesn't like safety's more important to him than anything, which later on I'll get to. It's even more important than freedom to him, safety. So I love what they did with Iron Man in this movie, and I love the fact that he was the one that made Ultron. That was really cool. And I like the action scenes a lot better in this one than I do Avengers 1. And Age of Ultron I actually like rewatching. It's probably the first movie on the list where I actually go back and rewatch it. What's your next?
Number 12. That's going to be Guardians Volume 2. It's going to be my next one. Out of all of the films up until now, this is one that I have gone back and watched scenes from when I have not done that with these other ones. Everything I loved about the first one, Groot being the main thing. I love Groot, and I will go back and watch any of the scenes with Baby Groot in them. Plain and simple.
And that's why it's above Captain America.
It's above Captain America. I'm not going to go
back and watch Baby Groot.
I'm not going to go back and watch Captain America fly that plane into the ice, water, whatever.
Okay, that's definitely not the only scene in the movie.
So I'm just using this as an example. I'm not going to go back and watch any scene from Captain America, but I'd go back and watch. I love watching the opening scene to Guardians Volume 2. It's one of my favorite things. I just really like it. I like all of the characters more in Volume 2 than I did in Volume 1.
Not the case for me.
I love when Nebula shows up trying to kill Gamora. I enjoyed that. I did not like the villain. I thought that was definitely the weakest part of it. I didn't mind the whole Yondu thing. I expect Guardians to be more cartoony and funny, and that's why I'm okay with Volume 2.
So what?
Just Baby Groot trying not to blow them up because he can't get the sequence right. That's just great.
What number was that on your list?
That is number 12 on my list.
So we're going to jump into my number 12, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, which I think is a much better movie. The only reason this movie isn't higher...
What was your number 13?
13 was Age of Ultron.
That's right.
The only reason Guardians 1 isn't higher on my list is because of the end. I loved everything they did about this movie. I liked Star-Lord, I liked Gamora, I liked Drax, I liked Groot, I liked Rocket. I loved all these misfits, the story of them all coming together. There were a bunch of losers, oddballs. Then they, through the course of the movie, kind of forged this kind of friendship, and that's why I love this one more than number 2, is because I like the story of them coming together a lot more than the plot line number 2. So that worked really well for me. I didn't like the villain. I didn't like Ronan at all. He was really bland. I did like when it showed Thanos a couple times in the first one. That was really cool. And Nebula also fell flat for me in this movie. But overall, the main plot line I loved a lot more than the second one. The only reason this movie isn't top tier for me is because they butchered the end. So Groot sacrificed himself was awesome. He says, "We are Groot." I love that scene. But to kill the bad guy after doing a dance-off is the dumbest crap I've ever seen. This is probably one of my least favorite scenes in all the MCU. And
That's
a lot
why
of people,
it's so low on my
a lot of
list.
people thought it was funny and laughing, and I'm like, this is so freaking dumb. So Star-Lord has a little dance-off to distract him, and they get the stone, and then the infamous line where Peter Quill says, "Because we're the Guardians of the Galaxy, bitch." And then they freaking like blow Ronan up. Nah, man, that doesn't work for me.
That's why it's so low on the list for me, because the movie was so many good things about the film. You know, all the misfits coming together, just all these characters. You know, you get to the end and you get to that scene, and it's just kind of like, oh, so this is the kind of film that this is. So the reason it's so low on my list is for that reason. And the reason I like number 2 better is because I went in expecting. Getting what I expected. I got what I expected out of Volume 2, and I was able to enjoy it because I didn't feel like I had that slap in the face that ruined the first one for me.
That's a good point. But the first one is so stellar to me, and all the other points is why it's higher to me on the list. Just that ending just butchered it and dropped it down. So what's next on your list? What number are you at?
We're at number 11.